Alright, YouTube, Clinton has to be at least slightly nervous because now Wikileaks is promising a little surprise for Tim Kaine and Donna Brazile. Now, I have to assume it probably has to do with the fact that Donna Brazile and Tim Kaine have both attacked the validity of the Wikileaks revelations. So I have to assume that their surprise has to do with proof positive that they know it's real, of some kind or another. It's not exactly clear exactly what form that'll take, but it's probably something email related. Maybe Podesta and Tim Kaine and Donna Brazile had a three-way talk about damage control in regards to WikiLeaks or something. Maybe they openly admit, oh yeah, we should just cast them as Russian agents. People hopefully won't pay attention to them or something. Probably a little bit nerve-wracking, especially when this is now twain, with the fact that at least CNN, of the legacy news networks, prior to a few days ago, all of them, including Fox, by the way, is no friend of the Trumpites within the Republican Party. They're more McCain neocons, if anything. Up until a few days ago, none of the legacy media people in the so-called press were really talking. They weren't talking about O'Keefe and the fact that he was promising major revelations. Now it's shaping the entire campaign, honestly. They weren't talking much about WikiLeaks, and now because of the combined efforts of various investigative journalists, they're forced to talk about it. CNN has been brought to the table for the first time as far as actually reporting on this. I've actually seen two different segments where they not only discuss it in a serious manner, without trying to character assassinate O'Keefe or Julian Assange, but actually go after some of these Democratic staffers that they have on interviews. Well, you know, how can you possibly defend this? It's on tape, or these emails are real. What does it matter if the Russians supposedly hacked your server? And, you know, by the way, where's the proof of that? Fox and CNN now have joined the ranks of the real press, which is, again, as I've said many times now, YouTubers, bloggers, underground sites, actual investigative journalists, actual muckrakers associated with leaking material. That's the real press. And the real press has, for the entire campaign, covered politics in a great deal of detail. I've been analyzing things, many others have been analyzing things. It's much more fair than what you're getting on TV, because most people, if they have a YouTube channel or a blog or something, they're not getting paid for what they do. If they're getting any money at all, it's voluntary donations, maybe ad revenue. I don't take ad revenue, but some do. I don't fault them if they choose that course. I think there are more effective ways to raise money. I do that with books and with Patreon. I choose not to use AdSense, but whatever floats your boat. But we're not, you know, I don't pull in a seven-figure salary to do what I do. I just happen to have an interest in talking to the world. Instead of saying, all right, YouTube, I should probably just say, all right, world at this point, considering the number of people that have come to this channel. And the reason why that's happening, it's not a coincidence. It's not just, oh, well, you know, Sargon mentioned you, therefore suddenly you doubled your subscriber count. It's because people are being driven to this sort of content across all platforms. And I will say, in fairness to him, yeah, I got a nice boost of, I think, 3,000 people after he mentioned me. Thank you, Sargon. By the way, I do mean that. But there's organic growth going on across literally the whole internet of people who are capable of it. They have to be rational. They have to be capable of proper analysis. They have to be intelligent enough to understand at least the rudiments of foreign issues as well as domestic issues. If you're just talking about U.S. electoral politics and you don't know anything about the rest of the world, it kind of falls flat. For instance, Syria. If you don't know anything about the Syria situation and what's going on there, you probably don't understand quite why it's a terrible idea to institute a no-fly zone there. It's not just Russia, it's also China, it's also Iran. Many people don't know that. They don't even remember that the Chinese are there. But they are. They've got a ship idling offshore, waiting at a moment's notice to get involved. People need to understand that, perhaps, as well, that Hillary Clinton's actions are driving China and Russia closer together. And I don't blame them. For self-preservation only, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they form some sort of unholy alliance to stave off the possibility of a nuclear war, just to keep the West in line when it's clear that Clinton, if elected, will be the head warmonger, worse than Bush, potentially? But Clinton must be having nightmares right now, because I think she's starting to get it into her head that people have a lot more dirt, not just on Creamer, Bob Creamer and Foval and Vargas and all of these other players within the DNC and Democratic apparatus at large. Not only do they have dirt on them, they have dirt that extends higher. I heard somebody earlier commented that apparently one of O'Keefe's investigators managed to penetrate the White House and actually get into the White House, speak with Obama. I'm not seeing any proof that that's the case. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not saying this to denigrate from O'Keefe's credibility, as maybe CNN would. I'm saying this because until I actually see footage of such a thing, I'm going to assume that it's not there, because it's almost too good to be true. Honestly, in my estimation. The idea of a video of a drunken Hillary ranting about black people is alluring enough for me to want it to be true. I do. I want that to be true. But I have to take that with a small grain of salt. Not in the sense of, well, O'Keefe edits stuff, he's a criminal, I don't trust him. No, that's all a bunch of hype and propaganda from the Democratic apparatus. Now, what I'm saying is that until I actually see it, I can't tell you whether it's real or not, and it may, in some instances, be too good to be true. I have great hope, though, because the first two parts of rigging the election went completely viral. They've begun to reshape the election. I think that a lot of people, including a lot of Trump fans, don't realize the significance of what's already been released. You're not seeing the whole picture. You're seeing individual leaks, but you're not understanding. Let me put a hypothetical here that makes sense, and maybe you can understand why it's so exciting. If WikiLeaks and O'Keefe and these different people truly intend to gun for the Democratic Party, they are laying out the material in such a way as to create an effect that continues to grow, a snowballing effect. They're hoping by releasing semi-damaging material first, that in their response to that material, people like Donna Brazile and Tim Kaine and so forth that get trotted out by Clinton because she won't talk to the media, will literally hang themselves. You're giving them enough rope to hang themselves because you're allowing them to respond to the allegations that are made. They respond, they're lying when they respond, you expose the lie, and it makes the effect that much greater. Because then it shows that people were potentially aware at a higher level that things like that were going on, that there was an attempt to bus voters around, that there was an attempt to infiltrate Trump's rallies and cause chaos. We've proven it. It's proven. It did happen. This is how the DNC is currently operating. I have no doubt that either O'Keefe or WikiLeaks have proof that this sort of thing does go higher than just Bob Creamer. I have no reason to doubt that. They're obviously elated at what's happening. They wouldn't be speaking in these grandiose terms about Clinton's goose being cooked if they didn't have even better material to release. It wouldn't make sense. They haven't let us down so far. The fact that Assange has been cut off from the internet isn't stopping the Podesta leaks. I don't know what Hillary Clinton was thinking when she probably herself gave the order to do that. When she had John Kerry go hardball the Ecuadorians to say, oh, well, Assange shouldn't be on the internet because it's interfering with the election or some magical nonsense bullshit like that. What, did they think that that would stop the Podesta leaks? You think that there aren't 100 different copies of those? With different people, different staff, and trusted individuals. I bet Greenwald has copies of all that stuff. I bet there are dozens of people at WikiLeaks and associated with WikiLeaks that have it. O'Keefe himself probably is sharing info with WikiLeaks. They're probably working together. And why not? It would just make sense to do that. If your goal is to take down the Democratic apparatus, that's what you would do. I would say, for those who think that it's a purely partisan motive, WikiLeaks is not partisan. They went after Bush. They've gone after Republicans heavily. There's a reason why little Marco has come out and once again proven that he's an idiot. I still say vote for Marco Rubio. Just go ahead and do that. If you're in Florida, vote for Rubio, but don't expect him not to be a little bit shitty. Perhaps better than his opponent, but, not exactly all there at times. A little bit on the corrupt side. More likable, maybe, more coherent at times than, McCain or Romney or something, but still a little bit on the corrupt side. He knows what he's saying. When he says, oh, well, we shouldn't be cheering WikiLeaks on because it could be us next. Yes, it could. That's the whole point. The whole point is that WikiLeaks holds governments accountable. It brings transparency to otherwise opaque governments. Obama's administration has been about as transparent as a chunk of granite. And so WikiLeaks is helping him be the most transparent administration in history. He should give them all congressional medals or something like that. He should be giving them awards for helping him in his goal of being transparent. And Hillary Clinton is a chip off the old granite block as far as Obama's tactics are concerned. She's even more opaque. She won't even talk to a captive media that fawns over her and adores her half the time. She won't even give a presser with these people. You think she's going to run a transparent administration, be forthcoming to the media, own up when things go wrong, tell people what's going on? You think she feels accountable to anybody but herself? Of course not. It's impossible for her to feel that way. We can observe how she acts, how she speaks. It's kind of obvious. So I'm elated about WikiLeaks and James O'Keefe too. It's beginning to have a significant impact on the race when groups that we know for a fact, based on those same emails, are in league with Clinton directly. CNN has been paid off by the Clinton campaign. They've been paid money to shut the fuck up and not report anything bad about her. And they still have to. It's that damaging. For media groups that backed her to begin with and then either took bribes or got threatened by her to turn around and have to report negative things about her that could change the entire trajectory of the race, it has to be pretty damn damaging. They also have to, at this point, I think, assume that there's much more material that's going to be released. I have no doubt that O'Keefe is going to dump 3 or 4 more major video segments before the election. It's going to get coverage. It's obvious at this point some parts of the legacy media have capitulated to public demand because the amount of money that they're going to get by sharing those juicy tidbits with people, even if it's a fluff story and tries to gloss over the really damaging details, is far in excess of the amount of money the Clinton campaign has probably funded them to. As such, it's becoming less likely that without her complete shield of the media, that is the TV media, that Clinton can weather all of these scandals. Why do you think she doesn't like to talk to people? She doesn't like talking to people at rallies. She just gives her speech and leaves. She doesn't take questions from people. She doesn't take comments. She'll have you muscled out if you say anything that she doesn't like, even if it's just slightly off color. She doesn't talk to the press unless they're in specifically her plane, on her terms, on her timetable, at a very specific time, and she may or may not show up, and they have to go over the questions first with her. Politico and all of these other groups, MSNBC, they fluff up their interviews with her. They let her know ahead of time exactly what's going to be asked. And there's a reason for this. She knows that if she's questioned on these things, as she was at the debate, which I'm sure is most unhelpful for her campaign, she can put her foot in her mouth very, very easily. Because in Podesta's own words, at times she doesn't even appear to remember her own policy positions. That's because they change with a whim, according to public opinion and her own internal polling and focus groups, because she doesn't have any deep-seated beliefs, and so she just changes her mind with the political weather. In other words, I was against gay marriage before I was for it. I was for Iraq before I was against it. It's like John Kerry, his campaign on steroids, except that it's 10 times more inept. She's twice the warmonger of W. She's twice as inept as John Kerry. She's twice as boring as John McCain. And she's twice as much of a shyster as Mitt Romney. I'm not seeing any positive to electing her myself. I think at this point the polls have fairly clearly become uncoupled from reality. Although I do expect, whether those polls are rigged or fluffed up or they oversample Democrats or whatever, I expect there to be significant movement away from the Clinton camp before the election. Will it be enough to give Trump the election? I've told people, and I'm going to continue having to tell people, I'm sure, because as new people arrive, they may not realize this. I'm not making a set-in-stone prediction until at least the 1st of November. And if the polling is really close, or the sampling's all over the place, and all of these scandals begin blowing up on both sides in the media, and it's not clear, nobody has a clue what's going on, if it continues to be as chaotic as it is now, it might be the night before I can give an estimation of what happens. Even then, if I look at the polls, and I see, well, Clinton's up by 2 points, but there's reason to believe the poll sampling is all over the place, and I don't even know which polls could possibly be accurate. There's a 20-point spread between the one that shows Clinton at her height and the one that shows Trump at his height. I won't even give a prediction, because it'll be impossible to say. We don't know how many hidden Trump voters there might be. We don't know how much electoral fraud there may or may not be. We don't know what the late-breaking deciders will go for. We don't know how many undecided voters there will even be towards the end. We don't know what the impact of these scandals will be on either campaign. Of course, Clinton's scandals being much more continuous and much more alarming, I would say, at least in my estimation. I don't care about Trump saying pussy 10 years ago. It doesn't faze me in the least. I imagine that when Bill and Hillary are having a private conversation, much worse is said on a fairly regular basis. I've heard plenty of people that speak that way, including people that are quite well trained within academia, people who are going for a PhD in philosophy and things of that nature. Doesn't faze me in the least. I just don't care. That being said, it may not even be possible to give a prediction on the election till the night before. And even then, I might not be able to, I'll still have to qualify and say, but, ultimately my level of confidence in my own prediction is yes, high, or no, it's not particularly high. I may have to put a qualifier in there and say what my confidence is for my preliminary prediction or my final prediction anyway. At this moment, I have a low degree of confidence in anyone's prediction. But I don't think, with the legacy media pandering, and being so specifically biased, it's not any more clear whether they're rigging the polls and Clinton is actually even with Trump or behind. The Arizona poll, I would say that's definitely the case, as well as the Texas poll. I don't believe them even slightly. The methodology is completely screwed up. But in general, as far as the general goes in some of the swing states where you don't see Hillary magically up in an area that's actually plus 20R or something like that, I would say it's no longer clear whether there's a lot of rigging in the polls going on behalf of the Clinton campaign, or whether people have believed the propaganda of the media, and that's the actual number, inexplicably. I can't say with any degree of confidence which one of those is true. I believe Trump has an advantage specifically for the same reason that I've mentioned now for some time, which is that there are going to be continuous scandals embroiling the Democratic Party from here until the election. And it's going to continue getting worse. In the words of Wikileaks, they've got a surprise for Tim Kaine, running mate of Hillary Clinton and the head of the DNC. Therefore, I have to imagine that it's some sort of evidence. This is my prediction on Wikileaks' surprise that they're saying they're going to release, and they're not giving a timetable for that. My prediction is it's some sort of proof that the DNC and the Clinton campaign were both openly and completely aware of what Creamer and Fovel and so forth were doing. And if that's the case, if it turns out that the Clinton campaign knew that Trump's rallies were being infiltrated by agent provocateurs, and the DNC knew that that was going on, the fact that it's not technically illegal means nothing, and it will completely destroy her campaign. Possibly worse, I will say this. The effect, the fallout from that, would be worse than Clinton saying the N-word on a tape and ranting about fried chicken. The fallout would be worse. There would be no way for the Democrats to excuse it. At that point, even Salon and Being Liberal would say it was disgusting. They would say it was an open threat to democracy, and I would expect some of those groups, even people at places like HuffPost, some of them would probably drop their endorsement of Hillary Clinton and apologize for the country for being duped by somebody who they would quickly cover that up too. They'd say, oh, well, we always said that she was kind of like a Republican overall. This doesn't, Trump's still slimeball, but, we can't endorse her, but she's also kind of a Republican. Remember back when she was a Goldwater Republican? They'll cast it off like that. They'll take the easy way out. But it would be telling honesty. At that point, it would be clear that the DNC and the Clinton campaign were involved with potentially criminal behavior. Even if the only proof was to something that was non-criminal, it would also indicate the possibility that they knew that attempts to bus around voters were going on. That's the natural inclination of how people would consider what was being spoken of. That's my prediction for what WikiLeaks has. And if that's what WikiLeaks has, she's not going to be elected. That might be more damaging than a Hillary racist tape, honestly. The fact that it's fairly likely that such proof exists. I can't imagine that these people, who didn't apparently believe they were going to be hacked, considering all the other damaging things, they look at it this way. Think about this logically for a minute. You've got Podesta and Brazile and all these others. They're calling Bernie Sanders a doofus. They're talking about infiltrating the Catholic Church. They're talking about how Latino senators and governors and so forth are just being needy, wanting the Clintons to come over and help them win re-election or raise money or whatever. If these are the things that they talk about, these things that are disgusting to many voters and have been highly damaging for their credibility, if they're willing to talk about such things, and they're talking to Barack Obama himself on a proxy email address on an unsecured private server, that speaks to a level of ineptitude and sheer stupidity high enough for me to grant the possibility that they also openly talked about what Bob Creamer was doing, what Fovel was doing, and so forth. I have to assume that that's at least a possibility. If that's the way that they talk in this email correspondence, and their only answer is, well, the Russians hacked it, or it's got malware, so you shouldn't be reading it, or having CNN trot out the tired old lie that it's illegal for the public to read WikiLeaks revelations, sort of a Bushite tactic there, true, pure propaganda. If that's the only excuse they have, that excuse is not going to work if it comes to light that Donna Brazile and Tim Kaine knew what was going on. That sinks the running mate, and it sinks the head of the party itself. Even if Clinton herself is nowhere in that email, if it turns out that Kaine and Donna Brazile were discussing exactly what O'Keefe has leaked, it proves that O'Keefe's videos are real. There's number one. It proves that they're completely complicit in possible criminal activity. And it proves that they are definitely complicit in something that 99% of voters would consider completely unacceptable. There goes all of Hillary's soft support if that's the case. She loses the election. The fact that that's probably what WikiLeaks is going to drop is enamoring me to repeatedly refreshing their Twitter page. Then again, it could be anything else under the sun. Anything could be a surprise to them. It probably involves them both. Or maybe it's their own emails. Maybe their own accounts were hacked. Donna Brazile, of course, did mention when she was talking to Megyn Kelly, oh, well, thank God, thank the Jewish Jesus that I wasn't hacked by Russians. Well, maybe you were hacked. Maybe your system wasn't any more secure than these other ones because you're a moron too. It certainly seemed like it. She's sitting there ranting like she's Moses or Solomon or something with these high-sounding Martin Luther King crap-ass biblical words when she's being questioned about O'Keefe's video, pretending that her foes are like enemies of God or enemies of Jesus or something. That's not sensible. That's not the way that a sane, honest person responds to controversy. They respond directly. They say, yes, I did it, or no, I didn't do it. They don't deflect and start talking about something totally different. It's like an admission of guilt. It's like taking the fifth. Oh, did you kill your dad? Oh, well, I'm taking the fifth. It means, yeah, I did, but go and look for evidence because I'm not going to admit to it. That's what it means, generally speaking. So, there you go. The fact she didn't want to incriminate herself doesn't mean that she was innocent. I'm going to assume guilt in her case, because it's so obvious to me as a person who's studied the rudiments of linguistics that she's lying. Just like Hillary Clinton's lying when she's asked about, will you strike the Russians if they go over your no-fly zone that you want to implement, and she doesn't want to talk about it and starts talking about totally different things. It's because she's going to fire on them, because she's a dumbass. People, I think, before voting begins, are going to get to see how truly bad Hillary Clinton really is. That I say with a fairly high degree of confidence. And by the way, I'll say one last thing here. Let's say Hillary Clinton is elected anyway. Let's say that the propaganda worked, people actually think Trump's Hitler, and his campaign ends and she gets sworn in. She ends up back in the White House. Let's assume that happens. Does she have any political capital at all, or is she immediately assumed by a large plurality of the population to be dishonest in everything she says? Oh, the latter. Well, good luck fighting an uphill battle to try to get anybody to agree to anything. You've got an obstructionist House, which won't flip for the Democrats, by the way, regardless of whether the Senate does. They're already saying, even McCain, who's a total sellout neocon, is saying, oh, we won't confirm any justice she tries to appoint. Good luck, Hillary. And good luck, by the way, in the midterms when the GOP typically does better. Good luck after they probably retain the House then and maybe grab back the Senate in 2018. Good luck trying to get anything accomplished. Good luck trying to get your executive order on gun control that you talked about with Podesta passed, because it's not going to happen. It'll get shot down by the Supreme Court because you're never going to get to appoint your justice. That slot will remain open till you're out of the White House one way or the other. Whether it's your head or your feet that are going first, whether you stroke out or whether you don't get voted back in, and I highly doubt that she would win a second term. Regardless of that, she won't get her justice, she won't get her gun control. She may not even get her no-fly zone if Congress has any balls at all. She'll have no political capital. It'd be a do-nothing presidency. Just like the last 4 years have been marked by getting very little accomplished. And in a way, we're almost better for it. If Obama had been able to run roughshod over people and do whatever he wanted, we'd probably be in worse shape. We're in bad enough shape as it is with the government doing as little as it possibly can. And they're still talking about the TPP that Clinton supports. She probably would, unfortunately, get that because more and more Republicans look willing to negotiate about something that half of them probably haven't even read. But yeah, you're going to get to see a lot more scandalous stuff. That I'm sure of. WikiLeaks is promising a new surprise. At no time have O'Keefe or WikiLeaks fallen short so far. Everyone wonder after the balcony speech, which Assange helpfully now has vindicated me on. I said, well, it was never going to be about Clinton. Yeah, that was a Democratic ploy to try to get people to distrust what WikiLeaks was going to drop. It turns out that that's in the Podesta emails too. So I was right now, wasn't I? WikiLeaks has not fallen short. In fact, they've dumped a lot more material than I ever expected them to. O'Keefe hasn't fallen short. He's released 2 main videos and several shorter ones. The second video that he released has completely changed the trajectory of the entire race. People just don't realize yet how truly damaging this is going to get. She won't have any political capital whether she loses or whether she wins. And it's looking increasingly unlikely that she'll win. I don't care what the polls say. Polls can move a great distance when you have a real doozy of a scandal on your hands. And I expect maybe 2 real scandals on our hands involving Clinton before the voting in November. That's about all. Peace out.